right? Publisher Larry Lee, president and publisher of the Observer Media Group, and Sister Regina Wilson, executive director of California Black Media, for our fireside chat. And we're going to talk about from the pulpit to the press. Let's give them a hand, y'all. Has a mic. There we go. Wonderful. Oh, I get to sit down on this one. This is great. This is great. Yeah, get off my feet. First of all, thank you. These are friends of mine, long-term time friends, and I wanted to have this type of chat with you all during this conference because I believe it's so vital that we uplift the power of two things in the black community. One is the black church and the press. The relationship between the two is so vital, and we've kind of lost that relationship right now. In a time of Trump and extreme partisanship right now, we've seen nationally how the members of the black press have been attacked in a big, big way. Don Lemon, our sister that's in the White House, she's been right there. She's been attacked almost daily, through press conference and stuff. And in an age where, it seems like anything goes right now, and the White House is given license to attacking black media and just black bodies. I think it's important that we have this conversation and see how do we come together even more and be more intentional in coming together and moving in this space. So thank you for coming today. And I just wanted to land that out and have you introduce yourselves to the people, and let's just talk about it, all right? So let's start ladies first. Sister Wilson.
Well, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to be here and come back to Sacramento. I feel like this is my home away from home, because it was home, then I moved down to Southern California, but I'm back every time people see me. They're like, do you really still live here? And so, this is a timely conversation. I'm so happy to be here. But my name is Regina Brown Wilson, Executive Director of California Black Media. California Black Media was started by several publishers, but my father led the efforts, Hardy Brown, led the efforts to really create and organize black-owned media outlets to get their fair share of statewide advertising dollars. And I've then picked up the charge some 20-some years later to be able to, over the last decade, do just that. Work to get our fair share, organize the publishers, make sure that they are getting their fair share to tell the stories and document the things that are happening in our communities, in our churches, in our communities, in our schools, but document the things that are happening, and hopefully many times to create change.
Right.
You can't do that without, the resources, the dollars, and so we're fighting on two fronts to make sure that we are fighting the injustices that we see that are in our community, uplifting the people that are doing great things in our community, and then also trying to get the resources to be able to hold it all together. So I'm happy to be here and happy to, start off with this conversation. As you said, journalists are being attacked, and there is a difference between black journalists, the black media, black press, and black ownership. And so I know that we'll dig more into that, but understanding that, an attack on any front is an attack on all of us, but making sure that we also do know the distinctions and the differences. It's different when you own your own media. What they used to say when everybody was printing is, you don't mess with a man who buys his ink by the barrel. And so I still think that is true today. But the ownership is a really key thing of making sure that we are able to preserve our history the way it needs to be preserved.
Thank you, Regina. It's great to be among family, good to be here at Genesis. I do want to make a special shout out to a fellow publisher in the attendance as well, Talise Morrow from the Inland Valley News back there, that's right. She came all the way up here for this conference. So For me, the trip was much shorter. So I'm Larry Lee, president and publisher of The Observer. Here published here in Sacramento. My father was one of the founders of The Observer in November of 1962. We've been publishing here with pride and excellence, serving the Sacramento community since then. We recently, in March, expanded to Stockton, so we launched the Stockton Observer. I see my brother, Reverend Smith, there from Faith in the Valley. And so we have been called to kind of add our voice and our commitment to the African American community in Stockton as well too, and so that's something we're very proud of.
Congratulations.
Of adding to us. In this day and time, there's not many newsrooms that are expanding. Most of our news and local newsrooms today are either closing or reducing, and so we know we have favor, we know we're blessed, we know that we have an anointing over our organization that allows us to be able to withstand this very challenging time, but these times are challenging. For all the things that you mentioned, and all the things that were mentioned in the panel before, our community is under attack. The current administration, the climate that is out there is trying to dismantle our community.
Right.
Totally. Whether it's our community-based organizations, our students, our faith leaders, and our communications tools like newsrooms. Anybody who's doing work unapologetically focused on African Americans right now is under attack. And so you mentioned earlier coalition building and standing firm on the relationships that have gotten us here. This is a relationship that has gotten us here.
Right.
The Black press and the Black church is a relationship that has held our community together in times that were even tougher than they are today.
Right.
And so I welcome this conversation, look forward to seeing how we can come from this even better.
Right. Historically, the Black church and the Black press, our Black media, let me try to be more clear in that, has had a strong relationship. Tell us more about that from your perspective, your own experience about that relationship.
Well, I'll start, yeah. So I still call us the Black press, right?
Okay.
Because most of our Black-owned media organizations throughout this country, there's about 200 Black newspapers around the country. Mm-hmm. California is home of most of the Black newspapers in one state.
Huh.
But most of us are Black newspapers and have started with the Black press. So, and we use that term to kind of designate Black-owned media in our day and age. But it's fine to call Black-owned media. I don't have a problem with that. But historically, right? So in this nation, in March, we just celebrated the 199th anniversary of the founding of the first Black newspaper in America, Freedom's Journal. So it's March 16, 1827. Now, if you think about that, that's 40 years before the end of slavery. Blacks weren't even really allowed to read.
Right.
But there was a need for an organization like a Black newspaper to speak up and speak truth to power for African Americans. I don't say it was our first Black business, because I'm sure somebody Black needed their haircut before we started publishing. But I'll say the Black press is this nation's first Black industry.
Yes.
And so, but the founders of that publication were faith-based leaders as well too. So the connection between the Black press and the Black church goes all the way, predates the end of slavery, and is the origin of the Black press. And so there are countless examples of Black newspapers starting in the homes of those that had Black churches. Even when slavery came out, when we came out of slavery, I should say, when we came out of slavery, the Black press was instrumental alongside the Black churches with helping Blacks find their loved ones, right? So the effort of finding those that, I had been enslaved, they took my wife, they took my husband, I've been separated from my children. The Black press was that vehicle that was utilized to say, do you know where this person is. And that communication was also done in partnership with the black churches. They would go to the black churches, it would be part of the announcements, right?
Wow.
And so that legacy is in our DNA.
Right.
And it is long and historic and is unshakable from my opinion. We, as I mentioned, we just did our expansion into Stockton. We did 6 months of listening to the community, meeting with community leaders around the city, and we were very intentional in making sure we were meeting with the faith leaders. Very intentional. And God bless them, they invited me to potlucks and all kinds of stuff. It was wonderful because that is a relationship that is strong and firm and cannot really be broken, no matter what the moment of the day is.
And as Larry kind of gave the history, I'm going to talk about what I see right now across California. But even my own very parents, news outfit, many times the church was our distribution channel.
Right.
So I don't think that you can go into a place in this state, in a community in this state where there is a black community and there is a church, there's probably going to be the black press that is sitting there. So whatever your local black newspaper, they would serve really also as a distribution channel
Right.
for our community. And there's so many papers that still do that today. And so I think that you're right. I mean, I think that the bond is there. It's been there. And in those areas where there is that relationship with faith communities and the newspaper, that paper is going to probably be in a black church. Somebody is going to pick it up. They're going to see it on that Sunday. They're going to go and take it. I know that my mother just gave testimony at the Capitol not too long ago, and she talked about how while she understands that things are moving in a digital place, that she still goes to her church to pick up her black newspaper. So this is what happens, is that people are still there looking for that connection and community, and I believe that is where they are very much so linked. And where you don't have a black church, you have black businesses, and you'll find them in those black businesses. But I think that we've always, historically, what I've seen across the state is that we're still in our churches.
Right. And I remember that. I remember when the Sacramento Observer was.
Well, yeah, I was going to say that.
distributed,
Yeah. That's for the free black papers.
I know.
For those of us with a paid subscription, yes, we used to, and it was one of the things that we did for sure. What often happened, I'll just take a second just to explain. What often happened for us here in Sacramento is the church would pay here in Sacramento. The Observer is a paid publication. The church would pay for the publication to be delivered to the church. What we found here in Sacramento is that our community tended to, let's say, take that for granted, and so they would not necessarily pay for the Observer.
Right.
They would say, "Oh, I'll just get it at church for free," and then assume that the Observer was free, whereas we're a paid publication. So we like to make sure that folks understand and recognize the value of that. So that's why you don't see the Observer necessarily in our churches locally anymore. But maybe there's something we can work out.
Yeah.
I think that there is.
Oh, there always is.
There always is. I was thinking we could work on that together, right?
Absolutely.
To make that happen. Because we talk about being more intentional in creating that relationship, because I think it's so important for us to see us. Us to see our stories, and controlling our narrative.
Absolutely.
And messaging. And I want to talk more about that because right now, with the excess of information that we have and are exposed to, it's so important about controlling our narrative, controlling our story. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, California Black media has been around for over 20 years, but one of the things I can tell you is when I moved to Sacramento, I was working for then Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. Do not hold that against me. Our wonderful Dr. Margaret Fortune got me into that administration.
Why'd you throw her
We
under
gotta throw her under the bus. Throw her under the bus.
Sorry,
No,
Margaret.
I'm joking.
Yes,
I say that. But I was working in education. And no matter how I got here, I actually saw how people would sit in meetings. This is at the State Board of Education. They would sit in meetings and talk about education. We know that African Americans were not reading at grade level. Like 70% at that time, and I think 80% were not able to do math at grade level. Do you know that I would sit as the clerk of the board and listen to all these policymakers that I thought, oh my gosh, they're so smart. and nobody would ever mention anything about African Americans. They would never talk about African American students. That troubled me. And there were even black people on the board, and this is no shade to them, but we never were intentional about the policies and calling out the things that happened. And so when I got in position after I left administration and recaptured and started back up California Black Media, that was what happened. I looked, and once we started and we got a newsroom going, I said, look, I'm taking freelancers. I said, you may not know education policy. You may not know these governmental, all of the things that government does, the ABCs of all the acronyms. But you need to, when you go into a room and there's a press conference, you ask, what does this mean for the African American community? If you don't know anything else, force people to tell you what that policy means and the outcomes it will have for our communities. And what you will find now is that a lot of times people did not know, they couldn't answer that question, but we have forced people into having to answer that question. Cover California is a great example. They said, hey, we only have 5% African Americans. We don't need to do any advertising. So they were like, we're not gonna do any advertising to tell people about the ACA whenever it first started. So you mean to tell me that our black president who signs this into law, and you're not gonna do anything? And when we would see these press releases that they had spent $5 million with the Latino community to tell them, they never once. And so I started on a quest to have to go to the board meetings and ask the question every time during my 2 minutes of public comment. Larry Lee was there during that time, and after the executive director at the time got chewed out for ignoring black people, after that, every time I heard him speak, he was like, well, and then we got to do this for the African American community, and we have to do this for the African American community. And you would have thought our numbers jumped up somehow. But it's because we must ask the questions. And if we don't have our journalists there asking the questions, people will say, they're fine, they don't need anything. So that's why it's important for us to tell our narrative.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fantastic example. I think to your point, biblically, right, our people perish for a lack of knowledge, right? Yeah. So when we don't know about ourselves, we are slowly dying internally, right? And so I think it's really important that news organizations like ours speak truth to power, and it's all the things, right? It's everything from the oversight of the institutions that are that we pay taxpayer dollars to protect us, whether it's law enforcement agencies or other sorts of agencies. It's really important that we speak truth to power to that. But it's also really important that we show black joy. It's really important that we show the full experience of black people, because what you talk about the proliferation of media that's out there. Most of the media that we see out there that has black people in it is, not in serving us as a community.
You're right. So
young people, they might call it ratchet. I don't know. I call it ratchet. I don't know. But it is not us in our best light, and it doesn't feed to our soul. It's not good seed for our community. The black press is good seed for our community. It's the type of thing that bears great fruit, right? So when we talk about the black joy and the full experience of black people and why that's so important, that narrative helps to train up a child to teach him or her how they could or should be. They see this week on the cover of the Observer, this is just random paper this week. The front page of the paper this week is a historic photo of Luke Wood, Gary May, and Bishop Parnell Lovelace. In this city, we have 3 black university presidents.
Right.
Okay? That's just this week's cover. That's the one that's just out there, comes out today.
Random.
A historic photo where you're sitting here in this community and you pick up that cover and you see 3 university presidents on the front page of that paper. Then you pull inside a big, huge spread on my Cassandra Jennings' husband, Rick Jennings, about him going into his 4th, most likely expecting it to be his 4th term as a city council representative, and how he has been a mighty force on the city council. When he got there, there was 4 African Americans on city council. Now he's the only African American city council representative. How he's been this voice for our community in that seat. So it is showing people what we can be and how we can serve and how we can show up. So that controlling the narrative is extremely critical, and you honestly are only going to get that in the Black press.
Oh, so true, so true. I love that Black joy thing. That's so critical because our young people, right, need to see that now. And that's the question. I know a question that we've been dealing with in the church, and how do we reach our young folk? Where are we in the Black press on that? Because you guys have several challenges, I guess we all do, where people don't like to read. We ain't gonna pick this up right now. It is digital. What are we doing about that? What's the innovations?
So
how you tackling
on the ground
that?
level, right? I'll speak about on the ground level as far as a news outlet that's doing it. Our organization, and my team hears this from me all the time, we have to reach people where they are. We have to get to them where they are. Now, so the content, we think we'll do that with excellence. The challenge is like you said, getting to them where they are. Most young people, Gen Zers, they're not lacking for a desire or an interest of the information. Because honestly, if you think about it, the polls have shown that if you talk to them, they're very politically engaged. But their consumption of content, they don't know really where they're getting their content from. You ask them where they're getting it from, they'll name the platform. I saw it on TikTok, I saw it on Instagram, I saw it on Snapchat or something like that. They don't necessarily know where they're getting the information. So it's our job as news organizations to make sure that we're present where they are, so what they're consuming is our stuff. The challenge has been monetizing that. So I'll give you an example, a real world example from the Observer's. So in 2025, we grew our digital audience exponentially. We grew audience, we grew traffic, we grew followers, we grew all the things necessary that you say are necessary with growing people in a digital space of a certain age, because we had a tremendous growth. We do our 30 under 30 awards. We had tremendous growth of those under the age of 30 that were consuming our content and information. But the reality is, the challenge is, we had a 45% drop in digital revenue last year. Wow. 45% drop in digital revenue, despite our growth in digital audience and numbers. So that's when we need Regina's in the room to help us get those that will keep sustaining us financially, so we can continue to do the work to get to those young people.
Yeah, and Larry has been living this. I am one who I hate social media, but I know that we have to have it. So it is what it is. It's a necessary evil. But I also look at it as a distribution channel. And it doesn't matter. Everything is going to start with good content. And like he said, we have an issue, and in every industry of what I've been looking at, because I've been consuming it. So I consume a lot of different folks on social media, and I'm looking at the industry. I'm looking at Hollywood. They're facing same challenges very differently, but facing similar challenges. Music industry, same thing. Everybody is going through this change because there are a couple of companies at the top always, right? And they're able to take and collect all of everybody's information, and they set the premium on what goes, and they're even setting the algorithms of what people see. Right. And so they're kind of manipulating the entire marketplace while what Larry does is top-notch journalism. But he can't get paid for it properly because the people at the top, in the digital space, at the top, are like, yeah, no, we're only going to pay 0.0002% cents on that per impression. There's no way to monetize that. So I think what we're on right now is this quest and this journey to figure out all the ways to be able to support great journalism, our community news, first and foremost, so that they can continue to do this work without burdening everyone else. I oftentimes say, this is where the church gets to come into this conversation to be able to, help us strategize on how we do this, to bring the people of your congregation reading and paying attention to what stuff we're doing, but us also highlighting and being able to work together in these spaces, because we're going to need each other
Right.
to be able to fix this problem.
And I think, just to add to that, I think the uniqueness of this conversation and both of what our institutions do, the faith-based community and the Black press, is that we also recognize how important it is to get to those young people. And so we'll do the extra step, right? You guys will do the extra step. You'll do a youth program. You'll do something related specifically to young people. We'll do stuff that's very targeted to young people. We also know that oftentimes we've got to go sometimes and grab them by the hand, right? So it is within our normal existence to have events and things like that and convenings of young people to get them to be more aware of us as an organization and the things that they need to be paying attention to.
Speaking of young people,
Yes.
my daughter just graduated from
Yes, she
Syracuse
did.
University.
Yes, you did.
Her master's in TV, radio, and film.
That's right.
So you're going to have another person in that. I don't know where she's at right now.
She in the back.
Yeah, she's in the back doing the job.
I was talking to her mama yesterday about what,
Yeah.
if we need to get her to come back to Sacramento.
I'm telling you, please. So, but yeah, well, how do we encourage? So with these challenges that we do have, how do we encourage others and our more Black journalists to come into this space, media? I think there's a desire for it, but what is the entryway right now for those who are interested in doing that? That could be another place in which we collaborate on and show that this is a pathway. There's a pathway here to have their voices be heard even on a greater platform, in a greater way.
You know, I think, Larry, you guys are doing something that's phenomenal. I think I've seen other papers around the state do phenomenal things. I've even seen our publisher here, Talise Morrow, she integrates her children into this, into, hey, we're doing a program, you get your friends, you guys are gonna be the servers, you guys are gonna help us do this, that's gonna honor the community. And so I think that is something that small business, but Black communities have always done. You're like, I'm gonna grab the family members, I'm gonna grab you to grab your friends, and you guys are gonna come participate. I think we have to continue to do that. I know that I just served as a moderator for a debate that two churches, so my home church, St. Paul AME in San Bernardino, and Ecclesia Missionary Baptist Church in San Bernardino hosted a mayoral forum. And at that moment, I realized that they grabbed me to do this, to moderate the panel, but technically, I should have made sure that the local Black media that was there should have also been participating and helping to put that on, because it's doing those type of things. Larry has done that with the gubernatorial candidates and
Right.
work with Black in School. And so I think that when we continue to do these events and incorporate them so that they can see themselves, I think that is the thing that is phenomenal. And I'll leave you with one more note, is that CBM has never had a problem like working with the talent of people. We have this one photographer, his name is Max, and he's out of LA. And Max is really talented photographer, young, just talented. And he ended up getting this award. I can't remember what the award is called, but it was a big time award. And he went to, and I've given him a lot of opportunities. He's been able to shoot Kamala Harris. He's been able to shoot Mayor Bass. There were things that he had been in the room getting certain shots. And when he went and took his portfolio, and they were like, wow, man. And these were people from Bloomberg, LA Times, New York Times. They were like, man, how did you get all of that? And you know what he ended up saying? He was like, California Black media and the Black press of California gave me the opportunity.
Wow. Wow.
And so if we continue to give young people the opportunity as they rise, even if we don't have all the money, if we give them the opportunity, though, we are able to get them in rooms that people would most likely never be in. If you come and work at California Black Media, many times you're going to be covering somebody in the Capitol, some
Right.
senator, some assembly member, possibly the governor, some high-ranking official in taking on any of the different departments in the state. I'm going to put you in that position. And because you're asking those questions, you're going to get an opportunity that you would not get
Right.
at traditional papers. And so my message to anybody watching and anybody in the room who has family who wants to be in journalism, come see us, because I believe that many times the Black press is going to put you in places that you would never get those opportunities in a mainstream environment.
That's so true.
Yeah.
I'm just, I'm always, whenever I do press conferences and such, I'm always smiling whenever I see Regina or Larry or some other journalists now. I'm actually familiar now with the press. They walk in the room, and I'm like, yeah, they're here. That's so good. That's so good. We just saw each other at the Capitol a couple of days ago, so it was wonderful. Larry?
Yeah, I mean, I think Regina brings up a really great point, which because, one of our old school veteran photographers, Robert Maryland down there, you're an old school veteran photographer. Yes, you're an old school veteran photographer, absolutely.
The best, though.
And Robert has had the opportunity to shoot significant people from across the world, whether they're both here, whether they're in Sacramento or other places where we've sent him over the years. One of our reporters, she's of Liberian descent, and she had an opportunity to interview the Liberian president when he came here just a couple weeks ago. And for her, she was like, it would be my honor, be the honor of my professional career to be able to interview the Liberian president. And she got to sit down with him and do an interview with him. Like Regina said, those opportunities don't happen very often. I'll also say this too. So one of the distinctions between the black press, black-owned media, and mainstream media, particularly for job opportunities. First of all, nobody's getting rich in our industry, so let's just say that, unfortunately. I wish we were.
Not yet. I do
I know,
believe,
that's right. Not yet, that's right.
I am on a quest to make sure that we're making money.
That's right.
All right.
We've got to make, absolutely. No money, no mission. So let's just be real. We've got to be able to get paid. But one of the distinctions that we get to have, or that I always try and talk about to our staff. In mainstream newsrooms are going to ask you to come with a certain pedigree. They're going to ask you to come, with years of journalism school, years of journalism experience, and ask you to have gone through certain hoops to be in that newsroom. Oftentimes in a newsroom like ours, we don't ask those same types of requirements. We don't demand those same type of requirements. And I've always thought of this. Some of the best journalists who've ever come out of the black press never went to journalism school. Mm-hmm. They never studied journalism per se. But one, they might have a commitment to serving the community. Two, they might be very sharp and smart. You got to be smart, so there's that. But you also have to have a desire to learn and a willingness to learn as a lifelong learner. And so those types of skills don't necessarily always come through going through journalism school. And so there's opportunities in a black-owned newsroom like ours that you're not going to necessarily get. And with those opportunities comes the exposure to these other things.
That's wonderful. All right, so you heard it right there. Come see them, right?
Pull up.
Those pull up, car, pull up. I mean, car, and we work it out. Praise the Lord. So, built to last. This is what we're talking. This is the theme of this conference. I think it's a theme that we need, especially in this time. I want to give a shout out to Lakeisha Wells, who sits on our board. She came with that theme for us, built to last. She's my theme person. So how do we build to last in terms of press? How can the church help the press? And I think vice versa on building our message so that it does last, not just beyond Trump 2.0, but for now on. There's power in the word. And so we want to make sure that we keep our power.
This is kind of interesting, but something that when you say this, it makes me think of how many Sundays do we have in a month? I mean, how many Sundays do we have in a year? Fifth
52.
Sundays.
Oh,
Yeah,
Fifth Sundays?
Sundays.
Probably
fifth,
four.
4, yeah.
So maybe like 4. Now this is just me just throwing this out here, but maybe one of the things that we could do is on the 5th Sunday, we make that the black press and the black church, where there could be a love offering or what have you that can go to support the black-owned media in your community. Mm-hmm. Look, I'm happy. You're good. Y'all clapping for that. Y'all clapping for
Go
that.
ahead, clap it up back there, Talise.
I
see
love
you.
it. Clap it up, clap it up, clap it up. Maybe that is one of the places that we could start. And we put something together And we work with across denominations and across the state to
Yeah, a
make
big
that something
campaign.
that is a coordinated campaign. I mean, look,
Yes.
if you could have the church and have us not go to Target, I'm still confused if I'm supposed to go to Target or not. I don't go because I just said don't. But if we can do that,
Right.
then I know that we can then work to figure out how we're going to support each other. I don't know. You
No,
can
I love
expand
that.
on that, Larry.
I love that. I love the idea of a fifth Sunday Black Press, Black Pulpit partnership. Maybe that's got some peas up in there, but and with some paper as well too. No, but I love the idea of that because I think that shows. So again, no money, no mission, right? And oftentimes people take our Black media for granted.
Right.
In February, in particular, 1 week in February in particular, we lost 2 historic Black newspapers. In Portland, the Portland Scanner had been publishing for 50 years. They shut down. The week before, they were the week before. The next week, in Richmond, Virginia, the Richmond Free Press, which had been publishing for about 35 years, shut down. Now, Richmond, Virginia is a community of about 80% African Americans. There's no reason that a community like that should lose it wasn't a bad Black, the Richmond Free Press was a very good Black newspaper. The Portland Scanner is a very good Black newspaper. There's no reason that we should be losing Black newspapers. There's not a week that'll go by. I know Regina talks to publishers throughout the state. I talk to Black publishers throughout the country every day. There's not a week that goes by in this moment right now that I don't talk to a publisher one a week that tells me, Larry, I don't know if I'm gonna make it through the month. And it doesn't matter if you're a digital startup, if you are a legacy publication, if you've been publishing 5 years or 50 years, it doesn't matter where you are, we are challenged. So the idea or the notion of kind of getting back to our roots, I mean, I sent something to you in March because we had our Black Press Day we call it Black Press Sunday to celebrate the 199th anniversary, the anniversary of the Black Press. So I love the idea of that. I spoke too long about that. Sorry, but I got excited about that, so that's good. As far as being really intentional with the rest of like kind of the year and how we can do things. I mean, I know we provide a church directory. We often do faith coverage in our community on faith issues. Obviously, we cover when you step out into your nan hat, we got your back 1,000% for sure. And so I think those things are important. But I do think there has been a little bit of a weakening of, and I don't think it's our institutions. I think it's been a dismantling of those things by the power structure from our community. So our community, I feel like, sometimes just gets disconnected at times. And I think that it's really important for us to stand firm and to kind of bring them together. And maybe it's in those times of, 4 times a year where we kind of step up and say, hey, we are united for sure, and come stand with us in something like that. I think also, and I always say this to all of our faith leaders, our pages are open for your voice, right? So whether it's, we've run op-eds from you and others, anytime that we want to, that you want to like speak out about kind of what some of the things that you're doing, we're here for you. Even if it's a church anniversary, as long as it's kind of like a milestone church anniversary. We don't like to celebrate the 17th church anniversary necessarily, but although everyone needs to be celebrated, but we do want to make sure every anniversary needs to be celebrated. But we do want to kind of make sure that our pages and are available to helping to amplify the Black church.
And having that relationship is key. I mean, to grow it and all that. Relationships is the best form of currency. And I think if we invest in those relationships between the Black church and the Black press, we can really elevate our voices in a big way and actually satisfy the needs of both, there, because I've recognized, being in this position, the need for press. If you're not seen, you're not heard. Right? If not seen, not heard. And so and you are the vehicle to make sure that we will be seen and heard. in this environment. We have to come to a close on it. It seems like this flew by here, but have you enjoyed this conversation? Good. I want to thank you both again for agreeing to do this. I know you've been in and out and stuff. I thought you lived here too, but not. But
Well, I do kind of.
you're kind of. You're like second. You're a northern home, I guess, in California. But thank you for that, and Larry, always thank you for saying yes to me. Closing words. What would you say? What was the most important thing or the important takeaway from this conversation for this audience that you would like for us to have?
Let's see, closing words. I mean, I think, one, let me thank you and Nan and Genesis Church for doing this. I think, obviously, even the relationship of the church with the civil rights movement and the ongoing movement of the emancipation of our people is critically important. And so I'm very thankful for the opportunity to be here. It's not the first time I've had the opportunity to speak at this, and I hope it's not my last. So I'm thankful and don't take that for granted. I think that it's really important that, we talked about news and media in general, but it's really important that we talk about local newsrooms. You talked about relationships. Those things happen because of a local relationship, right? The fact that I know you and our relationship goes multi-generations,
Right.
for sure. But it's the local, the impact and the importance of local media is critical. I mentioned we were going to Stockton. We've expanded to Stockton. We did those 6 months of listening, and of all the things that we kind of heard, you would think that a newsrooms like ours, or the need of the community, is that they want us to come in and handle and address all of the, what might look like sensational type stories. Maybe it's corruption or the dysfunction of the city council and all those types of things, right? But they want from us things like community calendars and stories about their young people and things like that. Those are the things that bind a community. Stockton is a great example, unfortunately, of what happens when a community, when local news begins to leave a community. You get things that get done in the dark. You get dysfunction of elected officials. You get bad actors on social media that sow disinformation and misinformation. And so it begins to tear the fabric of a community apart. And so what's really important is that as we have this conversation about media. Yes, it's important to talk about the national figures and what's going on in national, but it's really important that we understand the importance of connecting communities through local news. We're going to do the stories on the Rick Jennings of the city council, or these others, that those things connect our communities in ways that other media can't. So please continue to support that.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'll make this so brief because I think everything that Larry said is just what's so important. Remember that it's local news that binds that community together. Support them in whichever way you can. So whether that's our Fifth Sunday idea, or whether that is subscribing, and whether that is, being able just to show up when they need you to show up. Matter of fact, I have something for you on June 9th I need you to show up to. And look, and that will be your tithing, at least from my side of the house. That will be what I need you to do, at least on that side of the house. But in all seriousness, I think it is showing up for one another. And I think that's what's so important. I mean, I flew up here because I was like, hey, when you call, I'm going to answer, and I'm going to show up. And so I think that it's showing up for one another, which is what's so important. And I think, just know your community news needs you. And even if they are struggling, don't kick them while they're down. Know that this is what's happening in our sector right now, and help. See if you can send those kids over. See if they can say, hey, you guys want to co-sponsor something with us? Let's do this together so we take some of the weight off of each other to be able to make it happen. And I know that once we work together, everybody will be powerful when the Black church and the Black press work together.
Amen. Regina Brown-Wilson and Larry Lee, let's put our hands together for them. The Pulpit and the press. Thank you so much. All right. Get a little music with transition. We're about to go into lunch. We got a spread over there. Ooh, it looks pretty good. We're going to take some pictures, and we're going to have a time to eat, and then we're going to follow up with another great fireside chat regarding AI. You don't want to miss it.